I wasn't even supposed to come to the wedding. I'd RSVP'd no months ago, ignored the text from our mom, even deleted the save the date like it was spam. But the night before, I found myself ironing the one decent shirt I owned, checking for wrinkles I couldn't fix. I still don't know why I went. Maybe some mix of guilt and morbid curiosity. When I pulled into the country club parking lot, I saw the rented Rolls-Royce, the valet line, the fancy ice sculpture shaped like a violin, all things my brother dreamed about since we were kids. He always wanted grandeur. Me? I just wanted quiet. A job that paid. A place to sleep without arguing. I walked in alone. No date. No family waiting with open arms. Just a polite nod from the bartender and a confused look from my brother's fiancée when she saw me. Her smile faltered for half a second. Then she pulled me into an uncomfortable side hug like I was a distant cousin who showed up uninvited. I took a seat near the back, next to an elderly man I recognized as my dad's best friend, Bill. He gave me a look I couldn't quite read. Pity? Recognition? It had been years. Behind him, I spotted her, Anna. My ex. The only woman I ever considered marrying. She was laughing at something my brother's boss said. Why the hell were all these people here? When my brother walked out in his tux, you'd think he was royalty. His hair slicked back, his smile a little too wide, like a man who finally won. He raised a glass as the MC called him up for his wedding toast. He cleared his throat. The mic squealed. I want to thank everyone here tonight, he started. Especially those who came from far away, like my big brother. His eyes landed on me. I forced a smile. He continued. People say weddings are about love. But really, they're about legacy. About family. About who carries on what we were raised with. And sometimes, when you look at your family tree, you wonder, how did I get stuck with a sibling like him? Laughter. Polite at first. My chest tightened. Was this happening? He leaned forward and added, you ever feel like the wrong son survived? Dead silence. I blinked. Even Anna stopped smiling. He went on, undeterred. Don't get me wrong, my brother's a survivor. Survived dropping out of college. Survived 3 firings. Survived a breakup that he caused. He gestured toward Anna. Man's got resilience. People looked at each other, unsure if they were still supposed to laugh. My stomach dropped. I was the punchline. He kept going, bringing up things only close family would know. The failed business, the fight at Dad's hospital bed, things I never thought he'd say out loud. Definitely not here. Not in front of my ex. Not in front of Bill. Not in front of his boss. I wanted to stand. I wanted to yell. But I couldn't move. I just sat there, heat rising up my neck, face numb. He ended with a smile. Anyway, I raised this glass to the lessons we learn, and the people who teach us what not to become. Applause. Scattered. Confused. Some laughed. Some didn't know what the hell they just heard. I didn't clap. I didn't blink. I just stared. Because deep down, I knew what this was about, and it wasn't just a wedding toast. It was a warning. I stayed seated long after the clapping died down. My drink sat untouched. My jaw was clenched so tight, I didn't notice until my temples started throbbing. What the hell was that? No one else seemed to know what to do with the speech either. The DJ awkwardly transitioned into some romantic jazz, and the caterers began serving salads like nothing happened. I caught a glimpse of Anna glancing back at me. Not with pity, not with disgust, something worse. Curiosity. I stood and slipped outside before I embarrassed myself further. The cool air hit my face like a slap. I lit a cigarette, even though I'd quit 3 years ago. Hands shaking, heart racing. My brother had always been theatrical, but this wasn't a performance. It was a message, and only I understood the subtext. We hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years. Not since our dad died. Not really. Texts here and there. Legal stuff. Logistics. But he'd made it clear he didn't forgive me for leaving him alone during Dad's last week in hospice. Never mind that I'd been there every day for 3 months before that, sleeping in a chair, missing shifts. He swooped in at the end, dramatic as ever, and acted like I abandoned both of them. I didn't, but I did make a choice. And apparently, tonight, he was ready to expose it. The door creaked open behind me. I expected Bill or Mom. Instead, it was Anna. Of course it was. Hey, she said gently. You okay? I exhaled smoke and nodded. Great. Just needed a minute. She leaned against the railing, folding her arms. She wore the same perfume she used to, the one that always made me think of movie theaters and snow. You didn't know he was going to say that, did you? I laughed bitterly. What gave it away? My complete dissociation or the vein popping out of my forehead? She smiled, but it faded quickly. He's angry. That much is obvious. But was any of it true? I looked at her. Really looked. Which part? That I ruined our family? Or that I let Dad die hating me? She said nothing. Did you know Dad left him something? I asked. In his will. She hesitated. No, neither did I. Until after the funeral. Apparently, there was a sealed letter. Only addressed to him. I found out when my brother posted a picture of it online. Captioned it. Answers finally make sense. She looked surprised. You're kidding. I wish I was. That letter changed everything. He never told me what it said, but his attitude shifted overnight. Cold. Dismissive. And now this speech. Anna touched my arm lightly. You know, he didn't win tonight. I turned to her. Didn't he? He humiliated me. In front of everyone. Including you. She looked away. I'm not rooting for him. I came because his fiancée is a friend. I didn't know you'd be here. We stood in silence. I flicked ash off the side of the deck, watching the ember fall into darkness. Then she asked the one question I dreaded. What really happened the night your dad died? I looked at her for a long time. Does it matter? Yes, she whispered. It does. I thought about the oxygen machine. The way Dad's hand trembled when he reached for mine. The sound of my brother yelling in the hallway. The nurse asking me, privately, about the DNR. And the decision I made, alone. I honored his wishes, I said quietly. Anna didn't press. She didn't need to. Her silence was loud enough. I should go, she said finally. But, if you ever want to talk, really talk, I'm around. Then she slipped back inside. I stayed out another 10 minutes, finishing my cigarette, then another. When I returned to the reception hall, it was like walking into a different world. People were dancing, laughing, drinking. My brother was at the center, twirling his new wife, grinning like a damn politician. Like he hadn't just shattered me with a smile. Then, as if summoned, he turned, mid-spin, and locked eyes with me. And winked. I nearly lost it right there. But I didn't. I nodded once, tight-lipped, and sat back at my table. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because if he wanted to drag our secrets into the light, I still had one he didn't know about. And it was buried deeper than that letter ever went. I didn't sleep that night. I left the reception before the cake was cut, drove home with my phone buzzing the entire ride, messages from Mom, a few from guests I barely knew, and even one from my brother. Didn't expect you to stay that long. Brave of you. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I kept replaying the speech in my head, each line dripping with calculated venom. But it was the phrase, "the wrong son survived," that dug the deepest. That wasn't a joke. That was something he'd been thinking about for a long time. And I knew exactly when that thought first planted itself in him. It was the night Dad died. I was the one in the room when it happened. The machines had been beeping slower for hours, oxygen hissing like a metronome counting down time. My brother had stepped out to take a call, some deal he couldn't miss, even though Dad was barely coherent. I remember sitting there, holding Dad's hand, watching his eyelids flutter like he was dreaming. He hadn't spoken clearly in days, but that night, he opened his mouth and said just 4 words. Don't let him decide. I didn't understand it at first. But then he looked at the "Do Not Resuscitate" form taped to the foot of the bed. His eyes met mine. Clear. Intentional. He was telling me to be the one to make the call, not my brother. I nodded, even though my chest was caving in. And 2 hours later, when the nurse came rushing in after his heart monitor flatlined, I stopped her. I said, no CPR. No intubation. Per his request. She paused, looked me in the eye, then she nodded. It wasn't until days later that my brother found out I made that call alone. And something in him cracked. He started claiming I rushed Dad's death. Said I did it to end the burden. Said I robbed him of saying goodbye. But what no one knew, not even him, was that Dad left a second letter. One he handed to me 3 weeks before the end, folded into a worn Bible he kept at the hospital. A letter I never showed anyone, because it wasn't meant for both of us. It was only for me. That night, after the wedding, I dug it out from the bottom of my sock drawer. The envelope was yellowing at the corners. I sat on the floor and read it again, even though I'd memorized every line years ago. If your brother finds this, I failed twice. I read that sentence 10 times. The rest of it was worse. Dad wrote about his regrets, how he favored my brother because he saw himself in him, how he couldn't fix the cracks in our family, how he hoped I'd be strong enough to carry the weight. He even admitted to blaming me when things went wrong, just because I was quieter, easier to pin things on. It was brutal, but it was honest. And I kept it hidden because I didn't want to be the one to reopen wounds after he was gone. Now I was starting to wonder if that had been a mistake. The letter my brother received, the one sealed and given after the funeral, I had no idea what it said. And I was terrified that maybe, just maybe, it told him the opposite. That he should hate me. That I was the one who failed. But if that were true, why would Dad make his final spoken words a warning against him? There were too many missing pieces. I couldn't sit still. The next morning, I drove to our mother's house. She didn't answer when I called, but I knew her routine. She always watered the front garden after church. And sure enough, she was there, floral gloves on, humming a hymn I hadn't heard since I was a kid. When she saw me, her face tensed. Not anger. Not warmth either. Something in between. I was wondering when you'd show up, she said. Can we talk? I asked. She stood slowly, brushing dirt off her knees. About the wedding? Or about what you did to your brother? That stung, but I swallowed it. Neither. About Dad's letter. She froze. I pressed on. The one he gave you. The one you gave to him. Her mouth pinched shut. She removed her gloves and motioned for me to follow her inside. We sat in the kitchen where the smell of fresh bread clashed with the tension thickening the room. I only gave it to him because your father asked me to, she said. Sealed envelope. Strict instructions. Do you know what it said? She shook her head. I didn't read it. I respected your father's wishes. And the one he gave me? In the Bible? That made her pause. You got one too? I nodded. 3 weeks before he died. She looked away. I think he told us 2 different stories, I said. Then I pulled the letter from my jacket pocket and laid it on the table. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. She read the first few lines, then set it down like it burned her. I should have read them both, she whispered. So should I said. I left my mother's house more confused than ever. She hadn't read the letters. She claimed she was just the messenger. But as I walked out the door, she said something I couldn't ignore. He always thought your brother needed protection. From himself. What the hell did that mean? The drive home was a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about those final days at the hospital. Dad had been fading, sure, but his mind, in brief flashes, was still sharp. Especially when he was angry. Or scared. And he was both when he warned me about my brother. I sat in my car outside my apartment, engine running, staring at the cracked dashboard like it might answer me. If Dad told me not to trust my brother, then why give him a letter at all? And why had my brother gone public with it? The photo he posted, the letter sealed with our father's initials, had been liked by hundreds of his smarmy real estate followers. I remembered the caption clearly. Some things finally make sense. R.I.P., old man. At the time, I thought it was just performative grief. But maybe it was more than that. Maybe he found something in that letter, something he was never meant to see. Maybe it wasn't even his letter. The thought hit like a punch to the chest. What if the letters got switched? I tore out of the parking lot like a lunatic and headed straight for the one place I hadn't been in over a year, my dad's storage unit. After he passed, I was supposed to help clean it out. My brother said he'd handle it. I didn't argue. I couldn't handle the grief. And truthfully, I didn't trust myself not to break down if I saw his old workbench, the army trunk, or God forbid, the flannel jacket still smelling like cigarettes and sawdust. But now I needed to see what was left behind. The unit was under my name. Still paid up. Still untouched. The man at the front desk barely looked up when I gave him my ID. Unit 118. Corner of the back row. I pulled up, unlocked the rusted padlock, and swung open the door. The smell hit first, stale paper and oil. Then the memories. Tools hung from pegboards like old ghosts. Boxes labeled in Dad's scratchy handwriting. Taxes 2001 to 2005. Photos, Mark's toys, James' art crap. I sifted through them, half hoping I wouldn't find anything, half hoping I would. Then I saw it. A small shoebox, shoved in the corner beneath some car manuals. On the lid, written in faded marker. Letters, to give. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside were 4 envelopes. One with my name, one with my brother's, one addressed to our mother, and one that simply said, "If I die early." My blood ran cold. The envelopes to me and my mom were still sealed. The one with my brother's name? Already opened. But it wasn't empty. Inside was a single sheet of paper, not Dad's usual handwriting. It was a copy, a scanned printout. I reached into the box and found another paper tucked beneath the rest. It was the original. Same words. Different name. My name. He'd taken my letter. Whether it was intentional or not, I didn't know. But my brother had received a message Dad meant for me and posted it to the world like some badge of suffering. I read it again. The tone was cold, confusing, regretful, but harsh. It said things like, "You always needed to be right," and "maybe failure will humble you." I remembered reading it the first time and feeling like a gut punch. But now that I had the original in my hands, with his name typed at the top, it hit different. That letter wasn't about me at all. It was about him. And Dad had tried to warn me all along. I grabbed the stack of envelopes, got back in the car, and drove straight to the after-party. Yeah, there was an after-party. Because nothing says holy matrimony like overpriced cocktails and champagne sprayed on rented tuxedos. They'd rented out the rooftop bar of some boutique hotel downtown. I slipped past security like I belonged, heart thudding, face numb. I found him near the bar, surrounded by his groomsmen and fake friends, laughing about something shallow. When he saw me, the smile dropped. I held up the envelope with his name. He went pale. We locked eyes. Then I motioned for him to follow me into the hallway. To my surprise, he did. The moment the door shut behind us, he hissed, "What the hell are you doing here?" "You opened the wrong letter," I said. "That one wasn't for you." He flinched. "What are you talking about?" I held up the original. "This one had my name on it. The one you posted, that was mine." Silence. Then he scoffed. "So what?" The words still fit. "No, they don't," I said. "Because the one he actually wrote to you is still sealed." I pulled it out and held it in front of him. He didn't take it. He just stared. "You never read the words meant for you," I said. "You built your hatred off something that wasn't yours to carry." He finally spoke, voice low. "And what if I don't want to know what he really thought?" I nodded slowly. "Then this entire grudge was for nothing." He said nothing, just turned and walked away. And for the first time in years, I felt taller. Because the truth was finally mine again. I sat in the rooftop stairwell for almost an hour after he left. The envelope with his name sat in my lap, unopened. I didn't follow him, didn't chase after some apology he'd never give. I just stared at the paper like it was radioactive. This letter had waited almost 2 years to be read. But suddenly, it didn't feel like it was my job to hand it over anymore. Let him come get it, if he wanted it. Eventually, I left the party through the back, unnoticed, and drove home in silence. No music, no calls, just the sound of my own pulse hammering in my ears. When I got home, I opened the letter addressed to my mother. I hadn't planned to, it wasn't mine. But something told me whatever was in there might finally tie everything together. Her letter was different, softer. Dad told her he regretted how distant he'd become after the boys grew up, how much he relied on her to hold the family together, while he buried himself in work and silence. There was a line I read twice, then 3 more times. "If they ever fight after I'm gone, it's because I never taught them how to forgive each other." That line hurt more than any of the coldness in the letter meant for me, or for him, because it was true. Dad didn't teach us how to forgive. He taught us how to compete. He taught us how to win. He taught us how to hide pain and sarcasm and make loyalty conditional. My brother and I weren't broken because of what we did to each other. We were broken because of what we inherited. I didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, I woke to a single text from him. "Where did you find it?" No hello. No apology. Just that. I stared at the screen a long time before replying. "Storage unit." He had letters for all of us. He responded immediately. "Did you read mine?" "No. Still sealed." "Bring it." I hesitated, then typed. "Why?" No answer. I left the letter on my kitchen counter and went to work. The rest of the day passed in a fog. I stocked shelves, nodded through small talk with coworkers, smiled when customers said thank you, but none of it registered. My body was doing what it was trained to do, but my mind was still in that damn stairwell. When I got home, the envelope was gone. There was no break-in, no sign of forced entry, just the door, locked like I left it, and the space on the counter empty. I froze, checked every surface, every drawer. Nothing. Then I saw the note, scribbled on the back of a grocery receipt. "Didn't think you'd actually keep it. Jay." He'd been in my apartment. I don't even know how. Maybe he remembered where I hid the spare key back in college. Maybe he followed me home and waited. Whatever the case, he took the letter. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not relief. Just hollow. 3 days passed. No messages. No calls. No smug posts online. Then on the fourth night, I got a knock at my door. It was him. He looked like hell. Tie crooked, eyes bloodshot, hair a mess like he hadn't slept in days. In his hand was the envelope, torn open. I stepped aside. He didn't come in. He just handed me the letter, already read, folded along new creases. You should see it, he said, voice low. He was brutal. I took it and read it right there in the doorway. Dad didn't hold back. He called him selfish, manipulative, obsessed with status and image. He admitted to feeding his ego when he should have set boundaries. He said, "Your brother paid for my mistakes more than you ever did." And the last line, "You've always needed the last word. I hope someday you learn to listen." I looked up. He was crying. Not sobbing. Not dramatic. Just quiet tears, sliding down a face that had never once shown weakness. "I thought he hated you," he whispered. I didn't say anything. I thought that letter confirmed it. I nodded slowly. It didn't. He leaned against the doorframe, exhaled hard. "I've hated you for so long. Blamed you for everything. Even things I knew weren't your fault." Silence. Then he added, "It was easier than hating him." That landed hard. Because I understood. He wasn't angry at me for pulling the plug. He was angry because Dad never told him the truth. And angry because I had to learn it alone. "I don't know what to do with this," he said. "Neither do I admitted. He looked at me for a long time. Then, for the first time in our adult lives, he said the words I never expected to hear. "I'm sorry." Not dramatic. Not performative. Just honest. Raw. I nodded. "I'm sorry, too." He didn't come in. He just stood there at the doorway a moment longer, eyes red, breathing uneven. Then he stepped back, nodded once like that was all he could manage, and walked away. I didn't try to stop him. Maybe because I knew we were both holding too much. Maybe because I could still feel the sharp edge of his toast cutting through the silence in my skull. But mostly, I let him go because, for the first time, I wasn't chasing his approval. Or Dad's. Or anyone's. The apology didn't undo the years. But it cracked something open. I kept the letter. Tucked it into the same shoebox I'd found in Dad's storage unit. Right beside my own. I stared at the last line again before sealing it. "I hope someday you learn to listen." That sentence didn't feel aimed just at him anymore. The next morning, I called our mother. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was tight, braced for more bad news. "I need to talk to you," I said. Face to face. There was a long pause before she replied. "Come by after church. Bring the letters." I did. She had the kettle already whistling when I walked in. Same house, same smell, same floral apron she always wore. The walls were still covered in framed photos of my brother's successes, his real estate plaques, his wedding save the date, his first house. Only one photo of me, a school picture from 8th grade, slightly crooked. I placed all 3 letters on the table, mine, his, and hers. She didn't say anything at first, just stared. "You knew he resented me," I said softly. "You saw it." She nodded. "Of course I did. But I thought it was better than him turning that anger inward." I sat down across from her. "That speech at the wedding, you still think that was better?" "No," she said quietly. "Not anymore." We sat in silence while she slowly read the letters. At one point, her hand shook. At another, she had to take her glasses off and wipe her eyes. When she finished, she looked up at me and said something I never expected. "I failed both of you." My throat tightened. "You didn't," I said quickly. "You did what you could." She shook her head. "No. I let your father do all the talking, all the deciding. And after he died, I let your brother keep speaking for the family. I never once asked how you were doing. Not really." Her voice cracked. "You were always the strong one. So I leaned on you, without ever asking if you could carry that weight." I stared at the table. It took everything I had not to cry. She reached across and touched my hand. "Your father loved you," she said, "but he didn't know how to show it. And I was afraid that if I pulled too hard on that thread, everything would unravel." "Maybe it needed to," I said. She smiled faintly. "Maybe." I stayed for dinner that night. For the first time in years. Nothing fancy, just stew and biscuits, but it tasted like forgiveness. And when I left, she hugged me longer than she had in a decade. As I drove home, I thought about Dad's letter again. How he said he favored my brother because he saw himself in him. It had taken me years to realize the bitter truth. He didn't see himself in me. And somehow, that made me the safer one to burden. The next few weeks passed quietly. No more late-night texts. No more cryptic posts. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from Bill, Dad's best friend. "I've been meaning to talk to you," he said. "Your father asked me to hold on to something. Said I'd know when to pass it on. He invited me over. I found him in his garage, the same place he and Dad used to fix up junkyard motorcycles. He handed me a dusty VHS tape and an envelope. He made this 6 months before he died," Bill said. "Didn't tell anyone else." The envelope read simply, "For when it gets too loud." Inside was a note. "Some things aren't meant to be written down. Play the tape, then let it go." That night, I borrowed an old player from a thrift store and sat on my floor, watching my father flicker to life on a scratched-up screen. His voice cracked as he said, "I've made a mess of things. If you're watching this, it's because the silence between you two has gotten too loud. And I didn't teach you how to talk through it. I don't know how to say this right, but..." He paused. Then, like he'd been holding it for years, "I'm proud of you, both of you, for surviving me." The screen went black. That was all. No grand speech. No final instructions. Just the most honest thing he'd ever said. I sat there for a long time. Then I turned the tape off. And finally, let it go. It took me a few days to tell my brother about the tape. I didn't want to surprise him with it, or make it seem like some final gotcha. I just sent him a message that said, "There's a video. From Dad." He left it with Bill. He wanted us both to see it. He didn't respond right away. Then, a few hours later, "Come over tomorrow." When I showed up at his place, he actually opened the door himself this time. No assistant. No glass of whiskey in hand. Just him, barefoot in sweatpants, like a regular human being. We sat on his couch. I placed the tape in the player he'd dug out of storage and hit play. Same screen. Same scratchy picture. Same words. And when Dad's face flickered off, we just sat there. Neither of us said anything. Until my brother whispered, "He looked old." I nodded. "Yeah." He rubbed a hand over his face. I waited my whole life for him to say he was proud, and it only came after he was gone. "I know." He leaned back. "I used to think if I just did everything right, got the job, the house, married someone beautiful, he'd finally give me that approval. And I thought if I stayed quiet and loyal, he'd trust me more." He looked at me. Turns out we were both guessing wrong. We sat in silence for a bit longer. Then he pulled something from under the couch cushion, a photo. The three of us, maybe from 20 years ago. Him, me, and Dad at some fishing pier. My brother's arm around Dad. My face squinting at the sun. "We used to be close," he said. "Yeah, until we weren't. I blamed you for a lot of things," he said. "But mostly, I blamed you for not being me." That hit harder than I expected. And then he added, "But I think Dad did the same thing." I nodded. He never really gave us the tools. He just handed us the weight and expected us to carry it. My brother leaned forward, elbows on knees. "So what do we do now?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe nothing. Maybe we don't force some magical fix. Maybe we just stop making it worse." He laughed quietly. "That sounds like something Dad would have said." We sat in that room for a long time. He offered me a beer. We watched some crappy movie and didn't talk through it. And for once, it wasn't awkward. When I left, I didn't expect some grand goodbye. But as I opened the door to leave, he called out, "Hey." I turned. "Thanks for not burning the letter." I just nodded. "Thanks for finally reading it." Weeks passed. Then months. We didn't become best friends. We didn't start having weekly dinners. But slowly, we stopped avoiding each other. We'd share articles. Text about Mom. Once, he sent me a video of his dog running into a sliding glass door, and I laughed harder than I had in months. We never really talked about the wedding toast again. But I saw him at Thanksgiving. He handed me a plate like it was the most natural thing in the world. No sarcasm. No biting comment. Just two brothers. Trying. After dinner, as we stood on the porch sipping coffee, he nudged me and said, "You know, I meant what I said in that speech." I turned slowly. "You mean the part where I'm a failure, or where the wrong son survived?" He smirked. "The part about you being resilient." I snorted. "Took you long enough." He looked out at the trees, nodded once. "Yeah, I guess it did." Then, quietly, he added, "But you were never the wrong one. Just the one I didn't understand." I didn't respond right away. Just took a sip of coffee, closed my eyes, and let the moment settle. Because sometimes the loudest things are the ones we never say. And for the first time in a long time, the silence between us didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace.